They say all work and no play makes you a dull boy. So I thought I would get out the Land Cruiser Project 80 and go do some off-roading. Last weekend, after I finished up the front end, at least the temporary fix for the front end, I had went and said the same thing. So I filled up the tank, and as soon as I did, it started pouring fuel out on the ground. So I drove around a little bit. It got a little bit less pouring out. So I figured there was definitely something cracked, broken, something going on in and around the fuel tank. So I went out in the desert and I did a little off-roading, and it did really, really good. Like, basic stuff, but I put it in some good ruts. Check for articulation and wheel spin. No wheel spin. But here's the thing. This is very strange. On this particular model, this particular year, 97, Toyota didn't put a center locking differential switch, a push button switch. The other Land Cruiser, the newer one, and the Lexus, which is a Land Cruiser, they both have the switches. This one doesn't. So what I figured out, I had to look and say, what the heck's going on with this, So what I figured out was, not me, what the actual deal was, when you put this into 4 low, right? It tells the car to engage the center diff locking actuator. And then you go into center lock. Now, let's just clear something up, because I see a lot of people out there not understanding what a center diff lock is. I've been off-roading my whole life. I've never had a vehicle with a center diff lock, okay? So this is something unique to all-wheel drive type systems, or in this case, full-time four-wheel drive. Totally different than all-wheel drive, but full-time four-wheel drive, all right? This has nothing to do with lockers on your axles. Everybody else who talks about lockers, that's what they're talking about. Actual traction, locking both wheels together on the same axle. Center locking diff has to do with this full-time system. And what it does is, while you're driving around everywhere, you could have power to any one of the 4 tires. All right? But you don't have power to them all, because if one starts to slip, that's where all the power goes, especially in these older ones. Newer ones with traction control systems and advanced track and all these different stuff, they do different things. But with this, say you're going off-road in a Land Cruiser and you don't have the center diff lock and you start to spin one wheel. That's it. You're there. When you lock the center differential on a full-time four-wheel drive Toyota, what that does is it pushes 50% of the power to the front of the vehicle and 50% of power to the back of the vehicle. Okay? Now you can spin a tire in front and you can spin a tire in the rear if you want, right? That's the deal. It's very simple when you look at it like that, right? So it has to do with the full-time four-wheel drive system. People are like, whoa, I'm triple locked. Well, triple locked? You mean you got twin lockers? This center differential is to do with this full-time four-wheel drive system, okay? That's all there is to that. It sounds cool saying triple locked, but that center diff, anyway, that was a long story. Now, so like I said, at the beginning of that explanation, I never had a vehicle that had a center locking differential. You drive around a two-wheel drive, you shift it into 4, your transfer case then automatically sends power to the front and the rear. Same thing. Well, because this one is always running through the transfer case, it uses this center locking diff to almost freewheel. So you're not feeling that like you're in four-wheel drive while on hard surfaces. And it's really good. That's the way it should be. It's a very well-designed system. So, on my other two, obviously, I had the buttons and all that stuff. Well, I went out to the desert. I was off-roading, and it did great. But then I thought, I never saw a light come on, because all the vehicles' lights come on saying center diff lock, center diff lock, center diff lock. Because when that comes on, in this one, it turns off your ABS, your automatic, your modulating brake system. In the Land Cruiser 100, it turns off active traction control. I got to be clear about that. It turns off stability control and turns on traction control. Okay, there you go. It turns off stability control, which is what you get on hard surfaces if you hit ice, snow, rain, stuff like that. But you want traction control on while off-road. So when that comes on, the cars do something else as well. Same thing happens in the Lexus. You turn it on, turns off stability control, turns on active track. What that means is you start to spin a tire, it's going to apply the brakes to that wheel and try and get the other tire to grab if it has more traction. So that's pretty cool. This system here isn't as smart as those other two because it's older, 10 years older. But I never saw the light come on, which was weird. And it didn't really click to me. I'm like, oh, well, maybe my lights burn out. I don't know. So, check this out. I went and I looked up some information. I had plenty of places in the dash with blank slots. So you can get the factory diff lock switch. All the retailers that supply parts for these, bumpers, suspension, all that, like 3 or 4 different ones that I get parts from, they all have this switch in stock. So I got a switch, and behind the dashboard, and it's just that little center section there. It's right where the radio is. Real easy to take out. So just in the center section here, this black section, you've got 2 screws here that go in this slide-in cubby, and then when you pull out your ashtray, there's 2 screws here and here. And then once you do that, it's just some of those push clips. Just some push clips on this side, and then this whole thing comes out. So right behind here, see, I had a blank space here. I still have a blank space there. I have a blank space there. On this side, I've got blank space here. So behind here, the factory has the harness there. It's just plugged into a dummy plug to hold it from rattling. All you do is unplug it from the dummy and plug it into the switch, and now you've got your center locking differential. You might ask, well, why does it matter? Why do you need a push button when it goes in when you put in 4 low? And a lot of people in the forum said, yeah, why do you add a switch? Why do you need to do that? That doesn't seem like a necessity. It's like, okay. Apparently, these are the people who maybe never really go off-road. So, right now, driving up here along this road, and this road, I'm in 4 high, right? Not 4 low, 4 high. Before, the way this was set up, I wouldn't have my center diff lock going, so I would not have power equally distributed to both axles. If you're going down a long gravel road for miles, hundreds of miles, you're going to be in 4 high, not 4 low. While you're on gravel road, you want your center diff lock, right? You're off-roading. You're not on a hard surface. That's why. In every other 4-wheel drive vehicle, you're going to be in that situation when you go into 4 high. Well, with this, you didn't have that option. And luckily, Toyota put it in there because on some previous years to this, they had the button in there. And obviously, the following years, the 100 series, that it was in there. They understood that you need to be able to select it, center diff lock in 4 high, not just 4 low. So I got it done. Pushed the button, didn't see any lights. So I'm like, oh great, I must have a burnt out light. And I started looking online how to take the dash apart to get to those lights, and it seemed like a real pain in the butt. Now I know from past experience about things like this, if you don't use and actuate things like actuators, they can get gummed up and stuck. So I went driving around town, and I'd push the button. I'd drive, 100 feet, push the button off. And you engage this as you're rolling. I'd drive, as long as I was on these little side streets just going straight on hard pavement, I'd push it. Did about over 10 times, maybe not quite 15 times. Bam, here comes the light. I'm like, yes, the light came on. So it was just stuck. I don't think whoever had this thing off-roaded it very much. Or, because underneath, there's no signs, no visible signs of like off-roading. Rocks scraping and scratching and denting. The four-wheel drive system, I don't know if it was ever put in 4-low. I put it in 4-low, it works great. It's really low. It feels really low. Feels lower than the other cars, but different engines too, right? This straight 6 versus those V8s in the other two Toyotas. It's a whole different feeling, which is really cool. Each one of these 3 vehicles feel completely different to drive and to off-road. And I like that. I like you're like, well, you got 3 of the same vehicle. No, they're totally different. They are totally different. So I'm out here. I was going to do some testing, but the forest is a bunch of closures because we have forest fires everywhere. So I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to contribute to ridiculousness. I'm going to head back out. But I wanted to, get a little time in. What I'll probably do, maybe tomorrow, I might loop out into the desert because that's all open and do some off-roading out there and record that because I want to, now that I have the center diff lock, that's the crazy thing. I didn't have the center diff lock going yet. None of the stuff on my test trail, I say test trail, if you guys have been watching my videos, you'll know the trail I've taken all the vehicles on. I've gone back and forth on. It's out there in the desert. It's like 7 miles long and it's got ruts and stuff in it. And I didn't even spin a wheel going through these ruts where I did in the Lexus. And I didn't even really take the 100 series through the bigger ruts. But this thing didn't spin a wheel. It just climbed over like a tank. And wasn't even center diff locked. So who knows? Yeah, I think it's going to be a good off-road machine, but I've been having a ton of fun working on it. I've got some more parts coming in, little stuff here and there. I really want to lift it. I've kind of thought about this. I want to lift it. Like I want it to get that look, the stance. Because one, if I lift it, it's going to be so much easier for me to slide underneath it and work on the stuff underneath. But I think that's a little bit out of order, but I'm getting closer mechanically, doing a lot of stuff. Did I ever finish my gas tank story? I didn't. So the leak, I looked online. There is a well-known spot that these tanks crack after many, many years. No one knows how it does it. It's not even a contact point. So I was able to source an OEM Toyota fuel tank out of Phoenix, like a 20-year-old tank. It was right in Phoenix, and it was from Toyota. It was in Toyota's warehouse. Got it to me in 2 days through my local dealership. I drove the car around last week and had to drive it 300 some odd miles, run the tank down till it went to empty and the light came on. I dropped the tank, easier than it sounds, kind of messy. I dropped the tank. You got to pull out the back seats. There's an inspection port. You disconnect all your fuel lines and your pump, electric stuff up top. You got to disconnect your filler and your vent line at the back top, and then you can drop it out. Supposed to remove your drive shaft. I didn't know that till I got that out. Took the drive shaft off, put in, I had to take the filler, the pump, and all that stuff out and put it in the new tank. Put it up in there. It took me about 3 hours probably. Did it later at night. I was actually starting to lose light. Took me about 3 hours. Filled it up, no leaks, no stank. No runs, no drips, no airs. So we're good there. That was one of the other major problems. There was the oil leak from the front end. There was a small oil leak from the front of the motor, which I have the parts for. And then there was a major fuel leak and gas vapor smell. Bad. I fixed it. It was a cracked fuel tank. It's about this big of a crack, and the fuel tank kind of, I don't know, maybe I can show you a picture of it, but I don't know if I have one. 25-gallon fuel tank. It's a bear to get in there, because you don't bolt the tank in and then put the skid plate on. The tank sits in the skid plate, then you put the skid plate up, then straps hold the skid plate. Nightmarish. I think it's a 2-person job, and I did it solo. Anyway, I'm out of here, you guys. It's like 7 at night. The sun is getting really low. That's why the light's weird. But I don't want to go through the forest very much, because the Forestry Service has closed off most entrances. This is my super secret entrance to get in here, and there was no signs. There's no gates there. So any one of the roads coming in that actually have the gates, they're closed and locked. Other roads that don't have gates, they had signs up blocking the road saying forest closed because of extreme fire danger. Now, we have about 10 fires going on right now around Arizona, at least 10. Big one up toward Williams, where I like to go a lot. Hopefully it's not going to, I think it's in the desert, kind of between Sedona and Perkinsville, working its way toward Flagstaff. Hopefully it doesn't keep going north, because then it'll get into the real big forest that I love up there, and that could be a real problem. So, all right, that's it for me, you guys. I am out of here. Hope you guys enjoyed this one.